Om Namasri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So we were discussing about the five types of vrittis. An understanding of the five types of vrittis are very important as they help us to understand the instrument which is known as the mind. The mind is our only instrument which we can use to catch hold of the real nature, which is pure consciousness. To go back to the source of pure consciousness, pure Satchidananda, Sat, Chit, and Ananda, we have to use our mind. So, mind is an instrument, it's our window to the world and also window to the inner life of the spirit. Whether you want to attain spirituality or whether you want to live a nice life in the world, in both the cases, the mind is an essential instrument. So that is why chitta or the mind stuff, as I told you, can take a lot of forms. It can take the form of the reactive mind or manas, it can take the form of buddhi or the refined mind, or which is also known as the discriminative mind. And of course, there is this ego, asmita or ahankara, which attaches itself to either the lower mind or the higher mind. The mind has to attach itself to the object of the perception that is taking place. As Swamiji explained, first the object is reflected through the sense organ. The sense organ takes it to the brain center, the inner sense organ, antakarana, and that inner sense organ places the experience of the world which we have before the mind, and then the mind decides what to do with that experience, how to react. If we are in for a personality whose mind is undeveloped or underdeveloped, so he will be using more of his lower mind or the manas. So that manas will be highly reactive in nature. So that person or that personality himself will be highly reactive. He will hardly be able to control his anger and all the other reactions which are very natural to animals. So more or less a underdeveloped human being will have a predominantly reactive mind. He will be acting more using his manas rather than the buddhi. So the chitta or the mind stuff, which is the storehouse of all our previous vritti, samskaras, which are again caused by vrittis. The vrittis are the waves of the mind. These waves are these samskaras are these tendencies which produces particular kind of waves. So that is why Patanjali believes that the study of vrittis, the five types of vrittis, are very important if we want to control the mind. If we want to control the waves of the mind, we have to understand what this manas is, what buddhi is, what ahankara is, and what the chitta is. And if we want to have a control, we have to use this manas, train it, restrain the vrittis which are coming in the chitta. So chitta vritti nirodha is the goal of yoga. So once the vrittis are steady, then we can study the mind, then we can focus it wherever we want. If we want to know our internal nature, we can focus it towards, I mean, in that direction. If we want to know the nature of the external universe, we can focus it outside. So whatever we do, whether we want to study external nature or internal nature, we have to study the mind. So ekagra chitta. So I told you there are five different stages, five different vrittis. At the same time, there are five different shades, the kshipta and the muda, which is the nature of the reactive mind. The muda avastha, which is dull, kshipta avastha, which is a scattered mind. Then again, I told you there are this vikshipta, that is gathering, ekagra, and nirudha. Nirudha means in samadhi, when it is totally concentrated. Ekagra means it is one pointed, but it is not fully not fully uh, concentrated. I mean, in the sense it does not supersede the state of dhyana. When you go to samadhi, where the ego also dissolves, the mind, of course, does not work there. The mind becomes steady because there are no waves. Even the ego, the wave of ahankara, also vanishes. So that is the niruddha or nirudha which is very quite high. So the next three, the first two, mudha avastha and the vikshipta avastha, scattered avastha, are common. They are very common for an ordinary mind, because our mind is always scattered, always going here and there. We are not able to focus on any one particular thing. But slowly it can become when you start gathering the mind, it becomes vikshipta. You don't allow the mind vrittis to scatter. You just hold them back. You make them vikshipta, in the opposite direction of kshipta. And then, of course, we have the ekagra. Then we try to make it one pointed by focusing or doing japa of the ishta. And finally, when you come to the final stage of nirudha, where the samadhi, where you experience samadhi or nirvana or moksha, whatever our goal is. So now these we were studying these five vrittis, and I'll just repeat it and recapitulate. First is pramana vritti, which is right knowledge. Then we have viparyaya, which I defined as viparyayo mithya jnanam atadrupa pratistham. It tries to establish or the next class of vrittis are those which are known as viparyaya, where one mistakes one thing for another. We see something and we understand. Just as Swamiji gives, a piece of mother of pearl is taken for a piece of silver. So from a distance, when you see the piece of mother of pearl, the shell, it looks like silver from a distance, or maybe when you casually look at it, but actually it is the mother of pearl. It's a piece of mother of pearl from which the pearl comes out. So that is not actually silver, but it looks like silver, like a rope and a snake. So that viparyaya vritti is which we often have. Most of our vrittis are viparyaya. We see certain things and understand it in a different way. We don't understand it as it is. We don't see things clearly. Our perceptions are not clear. So when the perception is not clear, we call it a viparyaya vritti. Then there is another vikalpa vritti, which is not because of wrong perception, but it is because of wrong words, the wrong vocabulary, or the wrong understanding of words. So this is a vikalpa vritti. We don't need any perception. We just hear something and we jump to certain conclusions. We don't try to. We don't have the patience to think about its real meaning. So also with scriptures, it can be about anything, any word that we hear. We are hearing words day in and day out. We are either reading words, we are hearing words, we are speaking words. So words are a very important mode of communication for a human being. Unlike the animals where they don't have this kind of vocabulary, we make extensive use of words. So Shabda Jnananupati Vastu Shunyo Vikalpaha, because Vikalpa is that vritti which is a sign of weakness of the chitta. The chitta does not take the form of buddhi, it takes the form of manas. That is why we make so many mistakes. We don't have the patience to listen to each word and try to understand the real meaning of that word and then proceed forward. We just casually hear some sentences and jump to some conclusion and then make mistakes. So this wrong vrittis are because of vikalpa. Unlike the previous wrong vritti, no, wrong jnana, which is viparyaya. Viparyaya is also wrong knowledge, but that is because of wrong perception. Whereas here it is not wrong perception. Here there is no perception. Here just you are hearing certain sounds. So sound is a kind of perception. You might have heard the word correctly, but somehow you don't know the meaning. That is why we have to always examine and have a little bit of restraint. So the idea of restraining the mind, which is the central theme of yoga, is just because we don't want these vrittis to come and create havoc in our lives. Our lives is a big confusion right now because of these wrong understanding of viparyaya vritti and vikalpa vritti. These are the two types of vrittis which are extremely volatile, and they are totally creating, I mean, they create a total havoc in the way we understand the world and the way we understand words and the perceptions, and also react to those perceptions and words. So, our whole life in this world, if you analyze, is nothing but perceiving the world outside and reacting to it at a most elementary level. So, we are using the manas all the time. We are perceiving certain things in the universe or listening to certain things in the universe and then reacting to both these vrittis, both, and they, if they are viparyaya, if they are not pramana vrittis, if we don't see things in the proper light, if our perceptions are not correct, then if we will have viparyaya vritti or vikalpa vrittis, and both are can be extremely dangerous. So we have to always establish some kind of restraint, because unless you restrain yourself, you don't know from where these vrittis have come. And after these vrittis come, we don't even have an idea of what those vrittis are. What do we do with that perception? Have we understood things rightly? Have we heard things rightly? Or even after hearing it rightly, have we interpreted those words or understood the deep significance of those words correctly? And if we are not doing it and just reacting, then we are using the viparyaya and vikalpa vrittis. So, two more types of vrittis we discussed: sleep, abhava pratyaya alambana vritti nidra. Nidra is a vritti which embraces the feeling of voidness. It is a special class of vritti. It is there both in sleep as well as dream. So when we are awake, we know that we have been sleeping. When we are awake, we know that we had a very good sleep. There was the memory of that sleep still fresh when we get up, that, oh, I slept nicely. So we can only have memory or perception in the dream. That which we do not perceive, we can never have any memory of. So if we have perceived something in the past, only then we can perceive it. Even to know that there was abhava pratyaya, that is abhava vritti. Abhava means that which is not there, total nothingness, voidness. So that voidness or nothingness is a type of vritti which keeps repeating continuously when we are in deep sleep. When we are in deep sleep, we are actually meditating on void, or thinking of the vrittis of void or nothingness. They are very predominant, and that is why we know that we have been sleeping. We had a deep sleep. But the other, when we are still sleeping and when we have dreams, there are other kinds of vrittis which are predominant in our mind. The vrittis can be viparyaya, they can also be vikalpa. Even in the dream, you can understand things wrongly. In fact, in dream, we see impossible things, things which are not possible in the waking life. The result is that there is lot of pramana vritti is not there. There are lot of uh, vrittis which are imaginary in nature. It's like a dream perception. It is based on previous perception, but it gets all mixed up, and you see fantastic things in the dream, things which perhaps would not have been possible during the waking state. So Swamiji now concludes saying every reaction is a wave in the whole lake of our mind. Mind is chitta, there is a wave. So every reaction we give, It's not the perception that disturbs the lake, it is the reaction that we give. That reaction, that wave is known as vrittis. So if during sleep, if the mind had no waves, it would have no perceptions, positive or negative. Therefore, we would not remember them. So the very reason of our remembering sleep, that we either had a nidra vritti, which was total void, total nothingness. Another class of vrittis we had, those were known as smriti, the memory. So the memory in a waking state, or the memory can be used in a sleep, even in the sleep state, the memory is quite active. So it is based on previous memory only that we can dream. Anubhuta Vishaya Sampramosha Smritihi. The memory is when the vrittis of perceived subjects, the subjects that we perceived in the past, do not slip away. They come back again and again. Those waves come back. You have seen a dog many times, but now you are not perceiving it. But these perceptions do not slip away. These come again and again. And then you try to imagine the dog, you would dream about the dog, or maybe even if you are awake, you do some kind of daydreaming, thinking that I have a dog and I'm walking with the dog and all those things. So these are the old actions or old perceptions which we are trying to recall back into, and through these impressions which come back to the consciousness, we have the so-called memory or smriti vritti. So smriti is also a vritti, and it can come from direct perception, false knowledge, verbal delusion, and sleep. So memory can come from different sources. How? You will just try to analyze now. Memory can come from direct perception. You have seen a snake, so you sleep, and then you see snakes all around you. Okay, when you are awake, you see a rope and you mistake it for a snake, and you become quite, you become full of fear, and you think it is a snake. So it's a wrong knowledge, it is false knowledge. It is viparyaya, not vikalpa, but it is viparyaya, false knowledge. The same false knowledge can give rise to false memory. Memory will be there. So every time you saw a rope and mistook it for a snake, when it comes in the dream also, you can get the same dream where you see a rope, but you see that it is a snake. So you are terribly afraid of that snake. Whereas when you go near, you find it is just a rope. So the same thing can happen in dream. So false knowledge or viparyaya also can give rise to smriti, or that is also a smriti. Then there is verbal delusion. Just as we misunderstand people, we misunderstand sentences, we misunderstand words. Similarly, in dream also there may be these misunderstandings, and the memory is the common factor, whether it is a waking state or a sleeping or a sleep state. Still the verbal delusion or the vikalpa vritti is there, and then of course you have sleep. So these ripples which are caused are known as vrittis. You hear a word, it is like throwing a stone into the lake of the chitta. Any word which strikes our eardrum, we hear some words, and suddenly a ripple of waves come from the chitta, depending on samskaras. Our previous understanding of that word, unless we are very clear about that word, unless we are very clear what that word means, what we do is we just interpret it the way we have understood it in the past. And that causes a ripple. That gives rise to another ripple. To give you an example, suppose uh, uh, we we are just we see as let us take the same example. We see a snake, we see a rope, for example, and then somebody tells us it is a snake. A companion who is walking with you, he says, oh, there is a snake there. Now you don't understand. Suppose you have never heard the word snake. He has heard the word snake. He has come from some other country where he has not read about the snakes. So the other person is telling him, oh, there is a snake, there is a snake there. But he doesn't understand what a snake is. So he just continues to walk. not knowing what the meaning of the snake is. So he has no wrong perception. He is seeing the snake, or he is seeing the rope, or whatever is existing. He is seeing something, and the other person is telling him it is a snake, and he doesn't bother because he doesn't know what a snake is. So he continues to go, and he's not afraid because he doesn't know what a snake means. So that is viparya, or vikalpa vritti has come in his mind. His He has seen something and he has heard something. So that hearing causes a ripple in his mind, and he says, "What is there?" "Oh, my friend is telling it, saying it is a snake." So anyway, what is he doesn't know what a snake can do, so he just goes forward. So these are the different ripples which are formed in the chitta, and we understand different things. Every person gives a reaction which is quite different than the other. Two persons seeing the same thing, one is afraid, the other person is not afraid, because he doesn't know what a snake is, what a snake can do to him. So these different ripples are nothing but chitta vrittis, which are in the form of a reaction. So that reaction, peculiar kind of ripple, is known as, if it comes in sleep, the ripple of memory. If it comes in sleep, it is a dream. If it is um, in the waking state, it is called as memory. So Swamiji sums up by saying, dream is another form of ripple which in the waking state is called memory. If you see it in a sleeping state, you call it a dream. If you see it in a waking state, it is known as memory or smriti. Now, the 12th verse is very important. It is taken from the Bhagavad Gita also. Bhagavad Gita, this concept is there. How to control the waves of the mind. We just discussed how many vrittis are there. How to control this vritti. So he says vrittis are 5 types. Some are klishta, some are aklishta. Klishta means painful, some are pleasurable, or those which give rise to pleasure is known as aklishta. And klishta means those which are painful. Now, but the goal of yoga is to control both. Whether the vritti is painful or not, we have to control it. Without control, both can be harmful. The pleasurable vritti ultimately may lead to pain. So it's not that you have to avoid only pain. You have to control only the vrittis of pain, klishta vrittis. You have to also deal with the aklishta vrittis. But aklishta vrittis are, since they are not painful, people tend to have those vrittis. But we have to control both. So the 12th verse says, the 12th sutra says, Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam Tan Nirodha. That means that tan means those vrittis. They can be controlled by practice, abhyasa, constant practice of sadhana, of japa, and all those things, and non-attachment. It's not enough just to practice. One has to have a detachment towards the world, because the more we have attachment, the more vrittis will be formed, and the more hard we have to work to stop those vrittis. So when you are practicing, that's why Thakur used to say, oh, you should spend some time in isolation, spend some time for yourself. We spend so much time in so many activities, either for ourselves or for others, but we don't get time to spend certain hours or a certain part of the day for ourselves, day or night. If we can't do that, then we can't uh, no amount of practice will help us. On one side, you go on practicing, other side, you are tremendously attached to many things of the world, then that practice does not fructify. The practice of sadhana has to be accompanied by vairagya. Abhyasa is not enough. Vairagya bhyam. Bhyam means both. Through abhyasa and through vairagya. Tan nirodha. Those vrittis can be controlled. Nirodha means control. The mind, to have non-attachment, must be clear, good, and rational. It must be, the chitta should take the shape of the buddhi. So unless the buddhi mind is clear, good, and rational, unless it is purified from the tinge of the world, The world gives it a gross tinge, and then it becomes manas. The more you are nearer to the Annamaya and the Pranamaya kosha, the manas becomes predominant. Buddhi or the Vijnanamaya kosha, the mind does not, the chitta does not uh, have the state of a buddhi, have the state of buddhi. It has the state of the manas. And that manas, the natural tendency of the manas is to go down and have proximity with Annamaya kosha and Pranamaya kosha. It should, so only a good and rational mind, that is a mind full of wisdom and buddhi, is uh, with that mind only it is possible to practice non-attachment. So why should we practice? Now what is the need for abhyasa? Abhyasa vairagya vairagyabhyam tan nirodha tat nirodha. You have to control the vrittis by abhyasa and vairagya. Now what is this abhyasa and why should we practice? Because Swamiji says each action which we do or each reaction is like a pulsation occurring on the surface of the lake. Now, when this, see, unlike the surface of the lake, or you take the waves of the sea, a wave is formed, it goes, these ripples cause a, the sand to take a definite pattern. When it goes and, unless if the water is flat, it will flatten everything. But if big waves are there, they just impress upon the sand, and that wavy form of the sand is the result. So that is how chitta is. We explain the existence of chitta. What is sanskara? It is that impression which is left after the wave or vritti has gone. The vritti has come, the vritti of anger. So 10 vrittis of anger have come, and they have passed, they have molded the chitta in such a way that 11th occasion, because you were angry, somebody taught you how to be angry, you become angry when the 11th time the same thing happens. Certain things happen, you get irritated, you get angry. Say, a insect sets, or somebody comes and abuses you. You react, you become angry. And he comes again and again and again, then it becomes a habit. So that anger has become a habit. The moment a certain person speaks certain words, you, because of your wrong understanding or because of your attachment, you just take those things very seriously. We accept the verbal attack or the verbal attack or the verbal reaction. There is a reaction to the verbal action which has been done by others. And that reaction, Swamiji says, even if the vibration dies out, you suddenly become angry. Maybe you are angry for a week or maybe some uh, few days or maybe a few hours also. Children are wonderful. Children forget. They quarrel today, tomorrow they are friends. But when we grow adult, our samskaras are so deep, we are not able to control that. And our anger sometimes lasts for a very long time. We go to the extent of not speaking to each other for months and days. That we saw very, it's very common. If we don't, if we are angry with some person or some other person is angry on us and we react in a very angry way, then the samskaras become so deep, these impressions, that we just don't want to speak again with that person. So this is how lack of control of the mind results in such habits. So when a large number of impressions are left on the mind, they become a habit. So then you say you are systematically or maybe spontaneously angry. You say, I try my best not to be angry, but then suddenly when certain things happen or certain words are uttered, I get angry. That is because of the samskaras. So Swamiji says when the vibration dies out, it still leaves behind an impression. The wave comes on the sand, it leaves an impression, then it subsides, no doubt, but the impression is still there. And next time the water comes, there is the tendency to take the shape of the sand, the coast. So also, Patanjali says, the samskaras are impressions which are left on the chitta because of the reactions of the manas or the lower mind. But if the reactions are of buddhi, then they are much better. Their vibrations are much better, and the samskaras are also good. Then you say he is a man of good samskara, or he is a man of good habits, good behavior. So when a large number of these impressions, samskaras, they a large number of impressions, they are left on the mind, they coalesce and become a habit. Then it is said, Swamiji says, we normally say habit is second nature. Swamiji says, no, you have to be so careful that habit is first nature. It's not just the whole nature of man. He says, just don't say habit is second nature. You can do, you can change your personality only by changing your habits. Swamiji gives so much of importance to abhyasa. Abhyasa means habit. Habitually practicing japa, habitually practicing sadhana. Unless we make it a habit, it will not have any impact. Casually, sometimes doing some spiritual practices won't help. It should become a burning passion. It should become a constant habit. That is how we create the samskara forcibly by constant repetition and habit. Once that is there, then it becomes easy for us to negotiate this world. So, habit is not just the first nature, the second nature of man. It is not only the first nature, but it is the whole of nature. What a person is a result of his habits. So, we have to be very careful what kind of habits we cultivate. Are they habits which were inspired by our buddhi, or were they habits purely reactive in nature? Anything that happens outside, we react. We don't have the patience, we don't have the restraining power. Swamiji says, if that restraining power is not there, then our habits form very quickly. All the habits, bad habits especially, they take less time to form because they are very easy. It's always uh, a trend which you see in most of the human beings is that mind tends to go down always. So it is easy to form bad habits. It's easy to climb uphill, but very easy to just fall down, to slide down. So Swamiji says to go uphill is always a different task, difficult task. So to create good samskaras, you have to go against gravity and slowly climb. Whereas to do bad things, you don't need inspiration. If you just allow yourself to fall, you will fall and create all sorts of problems for yourself and for others. That's why we have to be careful and see that we are in the hands of good habit and not bad habit. So, habit combined together are our samskaras. So, you can say samskaras are nothing but combined or coalesced habits. So, this gives us a consolation, Swamiji says. It gives us hope because we can't take, we need not take everything to be that, oh, it is because of samskaras, I can't change my samskaras. No. Swamiji says because they are habits, we can change it. We can have counter habits to remove the old habits. And that counter habits is known as pratipaksha bhavana. We will come to that sutra later on. Do the exact opposite of what your habit is. You know, a habit is every time you want to smoke, which has become a habit now, you make an habit that I will not smoke, I will eat something else or do something else. Whenever the trend, slowly the good habit controls the bad habit and he gives up smoking altogether. So everything we are is a result of our habits. So that gives us consolation because if it is only habit, we can make and unmake it. If what I am is only because of my habits, then I have the freedom to change my habits. So that is what Swamiji says, Patanjali says that we are the result of our habits. So that gives us some consolation that I might have cultivated many bad habits, but now I know I have to change my habits. I have to change my lifestyle. So you, in a positive way, this habits also, the samskaras also, good samskaras also help humanity, help us, help every personality by controlling his mind and directing it through good channels. So that habit, if it is formed, then the person continues to do a, things which are shreya, which are good for him, not prayer. The shreya attitude always persists in that person, and he tries to do as much good as possible without disturbing himself or without causing unnecessary influx of this input which gives rise to vrittis. So the controlling vrittis is our main goal, but then we have to use good vrittis to subdue the bad vrittis first and then throw away both. Thakur gave a wonderful example. Sadhana is like using a thorn to remove another thorn which is stuck. So to remove the bondage, vairagya is necessary, but at the same time you have to throw away that positive, that thorn, other thorn with which you removed the other smaller thorn which had gone inside the foot. Otherwise, this thorn can be dangerous. So you have to throw that. But good samskaras or good habits are like this good thorn which removes the effect of the bad thorns, the thorn which has got stuck into the foot, and then helps you to come out of that, to reverse the trend, reverse the habit, or maybe to subdue that habit and create a better habit in its place. That is how our character uh, develops. So Swamiji says these samskaras, if they are just a result of our vibrations, because when they come out of the mind, the reaction comes of the mind. Each one of our reactions is leaving a impression on the chitta. Chitta is so soft or so, it is changeable. Its plasticity is such that a lot of good habits can overwhelm us, and it can be changed into a good. The person can be changed into a good person, but at the same time, bad habits can also undo whatever good has been done. So our character development means just having good habits so that we habitually do good. We don't have to use our discrimination every time, though it is necessary in the initial stages. But once it becomes a habit, once japa becomes a habit, repetition of the holy name, that is the psychology behind japa, that it doesn't allow the mind, which we have distributed in different categories now, to come down to the level of manas. That is what sadhana does. So abhyasa and vairagya. Vairagya means not attaching our annamaya, the lower, not living predominantly in the lower two koshas. That is renunciation. Living in the higher koshas is renunciation of the gross for the subtle. So the more we renounce the gross and the more we embrace the subtle, the higher we go in our ladder of renunciation. That is the idea. Now, Swamiji says if good prevails, our character is nothing but the sum total of all the samskaras. That is fine. But one particular wave will prevail. You will react in a particular way. You will see some people habitually get irritated and get angry when things don't go their way. The others are more patient. They wait, then they wait a little more, and then they use some other techniques to nullify those negative waves. They just wait for the habits to die down, and then they cultivate new habits. So the only remedy for bad habits is to have counter good habits. So if good prevails, one becomes good. If wicked thoughts prevail more and more, then one becomes habitually wicked, and habitually they are having that bad samskara. So they always react in a bad way because the tendency is bad. So if the tendency is good, even if you are placed in a bad place, in a bad surrounding, the tendency will force you to subdue the uh, destructive waves. Only the happy waves will be there. So that's why Swamiji concludes by saying only remedy for bad habits is to have the counter habits. And all the bad habits that have left the impressions are to be controlled by good habits. So first we have to make these good habits, not just some people just take some resolutions and from tomorrow we will do only the good habits, but the moment some temptation comes we again go back and start doing, or maybe go down and start doing negative things because of our bad habits. So we have to control by good habits. Not only that, The only way to do it, Swamiji says, is by doing good, thinking holy thoughts continuously. Have good thoughts, have good action. Both are necessary because samskaras are formed predominantly when the action component is very high. We act upon the thoughts. Thinking about smoking a cigarette is definitely it is a vritti, but thinking about smoking a cigarette and then buying the cigarette and actually smoking it makes the samskara deeper. That is why one has to counter it by doing good and thinking holy thoughts, good thoughts continuously. Japa we do continuously only because we can have a control over our bad habits and replace it with good habits. Japa is a good habit and it works in a different way as well. It not only counters but also destroys some of the bad habits which have not come to the surface. There are some bad habits which are potential. They are deeply embedded in our mind. They don't come out normally, but they have a tendency to come out. So japa is a positive habit, an abhyasa is a positive habit, which is japa is like an abhyasa, which when it is persistently repeated, they change the samskara for good. They destroy the potential or the latent samskaras also. They just don't counter the thoughts which have already come out, but they don't even allow the thoughts to come. So that is what the bija is supposed to do. The bij mantra is a very powerful counter thought or a very powerful technique by which the thoughts which are reactive in nature, they are completely blocked. So that is how we should not any time criticize. Swamiji says, never say man is hopeless, that he has no hope, he is there doing so many bad things he's missed, because he is just a character representative. He just represents a character which is nothing but a bundle of habits. So all he has to do is change the bundle of habits, which can be done through abhyasa and vairagya, and then these habits can be replaced with good habits. Slowly starts developing insight into the nature of the spiritual habits, what spiritual habits are, what spirituality does for a person. All these things, if they are clear, then you will see they will run after that. And the repeated, but just running after that or just trying to understand what are the good habits, what are the good vrittis, how do they act is not enough. We have to act upon it. We have to test it in our all the different situations in life and see if your character, new character or transformation that is taking place because of repeated good habits, does it stand the test? Is our japa fructifying? Does it result in transformation? That is more important. How many hours you do or what you do, that is not important, but one should see a distinct change in one's own character if one is doing japa properly or any good work properly in a systematic way, repeated way. So character is repeated habits. So if you repeat good habits, and repeated habits alone can reform character. So reformation, you just by saying reformation, I want to reform you and give you some ideas, that is not going to happen. The ideas have to be taken again and again, persistently repeated in the mind. Actions have to be performed inspired by those advices of great prophets, and then when we do it, our character becomes established. So that is what Swamiji says, that character building is one of the important signs of yoga or spirituality. If one says, I can teach yoga, I can teach spirituality, I have understood the four yogas, I know what they stand for, but if he at the same time is not a man of good character, then you don't have to trust him. It is very dangerous to trust. So it's just not just the words, but the vibration behind the words, the greatness of the person who is speaking it. If Sri Ramakrishna speaks tomorrow the same words or the same words which are we are reading now, if Swamiji himself after meditation spoke these words, what a tremendous impact it would have on all of us. So also we will see that the good words, the good japa which we do constantly. The idea behind japa is just without allowing the mind to drift down. You try to repeat the name as much as possible so that it becomes this repeated habits of the japa counters all our evil samskaras or the old samskaras which would have dragged us down and makes us a wiser person. So sometimes it's very important to give the right kind of input for children and for younger people so that they establish the right habit. One of our swamis, I remember, he knew children have a habit of grabbing things. If somebody brings a nice chocolate or something to eat, the youngest child will be the first to run and grab it because it doesn't have any kind of sense control. It just sees a chocolate, it desperately wants it. And so also adults have, they have their own, grown up people have their own chocolates, own toys, so they run after those things as well. So the idea is that unless we practice the good habits, just listening once or twice, remembering them or reproducing them is not going to be enough. We have to see that these habits result in transformation in character by repeatedly performing it, either japa or prayers or even work done for the sake of the Lord. See, that is a surprising thing. How can work change the character or the habit? It's in fact when you convert the thought into action, then it becomes a deeper samskara. If you just think, go on thinking, I'm a good person, I'm a good person, I'm a good person, it doesn't create a deep samskara. But if you really act good 2 or 3 times, if you do some noble action, they become deeper samskaras. So, Swamiji asks us to take this topic of vrittis, especially that of chitta and the samskaras, where repeated habits or a disciplined life is so important. That is why, in spite of all the problems or the nature of the work associated with each, one has to remember that he has to somehow give some time for the development of character. In fact, ideally, one is supposed to do it when one is in the school. Along with the knowledge of the world, they are also supposed to be uh, made into human beings with a good moral character. So, if we want good character, then we have to very, very cautiously use the right thoughts, give the right inputs, think the right thoughts, and do the right action also. So, by good action, by the right action, and if we do all this, all the habits, if we cultivate not just once, twice, but go on and on and on patiently, that can be very effective in transforming character. So that's why tatra sthito yatno abhyasa, continuous struggle to keep these thoughts, vrittis, perfectly restrained is practice. What is practice? Practice is not just practicing any sort of technique. Practicing is the struggle, continuous struggle to keep the vrittis perfectly restrained. So, uh, if you don't, if you want to restrain, then you have to practice this restraint. It doesn't come just by taking a resolution that I will restrain my mind. It won't happen that way. We have to go on restraining it in small things, then bigger things, and slowly you will find that any temptation is not, or any vritti which is produced in the mind does not become a samskara. You are just countering it and you are not allowing it to form a samskara. So Swamiji asks, what is this abhyasa or that practice? Tatra sthito yatno, the attempt to restrain the mind in the chitta form, to prevent its going out into waves. The moment we don't have a control over the chitta, it will form certain reactions, and that will be either spoken by us or we react in that particular way, and that can be a good source of trouble. So we have to know how to control our thoughts and how to change them for our advantage. So I think the time is over. Now let me just answer a few questions. So now I'll go to the first question. Yes. Yeah, did Thakur have dreams during the sleeping state? Definitely. Everybody had dreams. Thakur, in fact, mentioned some of his dreams. But for them, even the dreams are full of control. They, just as we control the waking state, they have these dreams, but they their dreams are of a much higher quality. Even if they dream, they will be dreaming about uh, some vision of God. And so Thakur had dreams. Definitely, he had dreams. Now, can a person have good and bad vrittis at the same time, and how to change them? Yes, obviously, the vrittis are good and bad. There may be many instances in your day-to-day life where a majority of the vrittis are good vrittis. So they create good samskara. But in one part of the chitta, there's another influence of your bad habits, continuously doing the wrong habits or the bad habits, wrong things. When you do that, that samskara is also created. So both bad and good vrittis can come. Of course, they won't come at the same time. Either it will be bad or a good. They fluctuate very fast. So it doesn't mean that you have to wait for a few seconds. No, it can be millisecond. A good thought followed by bad thought. So we can have the same in the same mind. We have these. Having good thought means elevating the mind. Having bad thought means going with the manas, going down. So you have to remember that both can be there, but not simultaneously. At one point of time, you either have a good thought or a bad thought. So yeah, it keeps on changing, and then that is what we have to control. Okay, we don't have to change them. The question is, are we? How do we have both? So you don't have to change them. You have to counter one by the other. You don't have to change. You can't change. In fact, the bad breath is the bad thought will come. You counter it with the good, so that the good remains. The effect of the bad goes. That's how it is done. Now, what are the important considerations to improve the mind, and how to assess the quality of the mind, and how to monitor the progress of the mind? Do honesty, truthfulness, sincerity, integrity, and other constitute the features and frames of mind? How is mind connected to the intellect? Yeah, it's a good question. There are many considerations. One is first to know what the vrittis are, and then second, how to control them. That is what we are discussing in the next few sutras, how to control them. One is through abhyasa and another is through vairagya. So the only way to improve the mind is to control the vrittis which are there in the mind, and through practice and renunciation, which we discussed in great detail yesterday. Uh, that class on Sri Krishna's main central message is on Facebook. You can see that. So there we had discussed what is the uniqueness of Sri Krishna. Whatever else it may be, he demonstrated that how a pure life, a life of purity can be lived. So that is how, and he used to give idea how to monitor the progress of the mind. Swamiji or even Sri Krishna or Patanjali, everybody says the same thing. You have to observe how to measure the progress. You at night you can sit and try to find out how was my day today, how many good thoughts were there, how many good actions I could do, how many bad. If you keep an account, then you'll realize that if you don't do good actions, if you don't do japa, don't do some good things, you will not, you will feel restless, and you would have a tendency to do more and more good. So that is how we should do. We should monitor by seeing at the end of the day, preferably before we go to sleep, how much of truthfulness, how many times we have had to tell something which is not true, some lies we might have had because of we think it is more practical to lie. So there are many instances which are happening. So one has to do it oneself, because nobody else can study our mind. We have to study our own mind. So we have to see, if we want to monitor the progress, then we have to see that it doesn't go down. Okay, how is the mind connected to the intellect? And mind is definitely known as manas. The ordinary mind, as we understand, is manas. It may have a little intelligence, but it doesn't have that discriminative capacity. If it studies physics, it will understand physics perfectly well. So it doesn't mean that the mind is inferior. It is inferior, but it is useless. It is not useless. It helps us to communicate. It helps us to do so many routine things because of the manas, the reactive mind. But at the same time, we have to understand and give some importance to the buddhi or the higher mind. So that is the difference. When you connect with the higher thoughts, the non gross thoughts, not the gross thoughts which again bring you down to the other category, but we have to raise our mind and take it at the level of buddhi. So that is intellect. The intellect and mind, the only difference is mind thinks, takes decisions without thinking, without restraining, and the chitta or the buddhi takes decision after considering all the aspects, after seeing everything, and then it discriminates and tries to find out what is permanent, what is temporary, what is the thing that we should seek, what are important things in our life, what are unimportant things in our life. This discriminative mind is known as intellect. So mind is connected to the intellect because they are part of the chitta. Mind stuff is the common stuff of which the mind is made. So when you want to say mind, how it is connected, it is always connected. It is part of the same chitta. But only thing is you can choose the consciousness. You can be choose to be conscious of a particular level of mind. You can be conscious of the manas, then you'll react like a animal or maybe a lower human being. But if you combine or you identify yourself with the buddhi or the intellect, then you will, I'm not talking of intellect in the narrow sense, in the secular sense, which the function of which can be easily done by manas. You don't have to come to buddhi. But the buddhi is one who controls, who takes the form of a discriminative mind, trying to analyze what is permanent, what is temporary. Okay? Are spiritual dreams real or are they vrittis? Can we believe spiritual dreams to be true? Yeah, it is just like in visions. I told you how to test whether we had a vision or a hallucination. Visions are always life transformative. Do we get abhyasa? Do we have the tendency to do more sadhana? Do we develop some kind of vairagya or renunciation? If it has, then it is a good vision. But if it doesn't motivate us, if it makes us more depressed, then better not have the vision. Or not even, but dreams we can't avoid. Dreams will come whether we want or not. But dreams can tell us our nature because we are recollecting something which we had thought. If we had bad dreams, maybe we indulged in bad activities, may not be in this life but in previous life. So we have to understand that the spiritual dreams are just like any other uh, daydream or anything, but only thing is uh, whether they are true or not, whether they are true to the extent they have an impact on your personality. That is, in simple words, if your character is not transformed, then the dreams may or may not come. If it comes, it is fine. But then does it come with a meaning? Does it tell you something to do? If that is true, then it is that dream is good or even the vision is good. But it should result in transformation. Now, uh, how do we handle purification periods uh, as we purity our minds and hearts? It is the same thing, whether it is the gross body or the gross mind or the gross manas or the gross prana. Pranayama is purification of the prana. We breathe in a proper way. If we breathe wrongly, we are polluting our lungs. We are causing harm to our lungs. So pranayama is how to regulate the breathing, how to regulate the different body currents. So just as you have to regulate your minds, you have to regulate your prana, you have to regulate your annamaya kosha also. So whatever is impure in the body or in the mind, they have to be dealt with the same attitude, the same thing. But you have to understand what is that impurity. It's not just something which the body does is something impure. Because when we go and excrete certain things, though they may be dirty things, but still it is necessary for our survival to throw out that which is a waste in our body. The perspiration, the sweat that we have, and all the things which we throw out of the body periodically, they would become poison if they are there. So it is absolutely necessary to throw out something. So purification doesn't mean mental purification alone, even physical purification. You have to throw out things which are not, which are harmful. So this throwing away that which is harmful is uh, the Annamaya Kosha level, then purifying the prana, purifying the mind, and purifying the intellect also. Manas, purification of manas means we have to carefully think what thoughts we have to think, how should we react, and all those things. These are at a primitive level. But at the buddhi level, we start questioning why. Why should we do? What is the goal of life? Why should I do the thing which I am doing now? Will it last with me? Last till eternity? Will it be useful to me? So all these things are result in purification of the mind, the manas, the reactive mind, and that you can do with the help of buddhi. So when the buddhi develops, then a different kind of purification takes place. So at different levels, the purification of the body, purification of the prana, purification of the mind, purification of the buddhi also will take place. So now last one, Swamiji, how did Thakur exercise control on his dreams? Please could you give an example? No, he did not control as such. But since his mind was controlled, we assume, because all the dreams that he has mentioned in the gospel and in other places, where he said, "One day I dreamed," you will find that he always had these divine dreams. Perhaps he never had nightmares, but he used to give certain hints, certain things which appear to be rather surprising. He says, for example, when you see a dead body or a corpse, that kind of dream is very good. People might feel, what is so good to dream about the dead body or a corpse or a fire which is burning? So Sri Ramakrishna knew how to interpret those dreams. When you have a deep dream about death, then you become aware of the fact that this body is temporary. So that helps you spiritually. So when you, so that's why Yudhishthira said, every day we hear of death, we see death occurring in front of us, and still we think we will live eternally. So all these things, dreams which appear, or the visualizations, or the daydreams, or the dreams when we sleep, for Thakur also, his interpretation was different. And he used to say that the many strange dreams he had, he used to explain to his disciples. And if some disciples went and told him that we had a such and such dream, he could interpret it properly. For us, it may be very difficult because we are not so subtle, we can't talk from the highest plane. But still, he could discriminate. Hmm? And would you recommend doing this in a spiritual journal, reflecting on the day? Any other advice? Yes, it's very good to keep a spiritual diary and make a note. You can keep it private, but if you feel the need, if you can do it in the mind, it is fine. But if you can't, then you can write a diary so that after some time you can refer to some last year where I was, what was my condition, how many dreams I had, how many nightmares I had, or whatever you remember of the olden days, you just note down. That is writing the diary of the past. But we have to at least start writing a diary, writing or mentioning our present experiences, or the present dreams, the present ideas which we get, good or bad, and just be little frank in writing the diary. because that is for you yourself. You know what you did yesterday, what you did in the morning, what you did in the afternoon. Everything, if you do it, can be a very useful technique. Diary writing is always good. Why do dreams appear in our mind? Can they be true? Dreams is a state. It's not just a question of why they appear. They appear, sometimes they are true, sometimes they are not true. They do not become true. Depends on the intensity. As I told you, there are so many conditions. Just as there are so many conditions. If you go to a country, the rules of that country are valid. They may not be valid in your country. So there are different rules in different countries. So different dreams, they are at a different level. Some dreams are true, it's a very big subject. We will discuss it when we take it up next, because how dream appears, why they appear, can they be true, or how many of them are true, this is a huge subject. And only people who have purified their mind by intense japa, they can have that intuitive vision. Even in the intuitive vision, to have it in the waking state, you need to do a lot of spiritual practice. It just doesn't come. You just can't interpret your dreams like that. You have to do it, and to know from where these dreams come, you have to first gather, understand these vrittis, try to control it, and then you will find that slowly you'll get a better understanding of how things function in the world, how our mind reacts to them, and all these things. So that's fine. So now I'll take your leave. Huh? Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.